They collided, and my client lost his leg.
If you're injured in a crash while riding your motorcycle, do you know how to get help? Well, we're going to find out right now, because that's what we're going to ask the lawyer on this episode. Hi again, everybody. I'm Rob Rosenthal with AskTheLawyers.com. My guest is attorney Brian Davis from North Carolina, who has had many years helping motorcyclists who have been injured in crashes, and also is a rider himself. We'll talk to Brian in just a second. I want to remind you, before we do that, if you have questions about your specific situation that you'd like to ask, just go to AskTheLawyers.com. Click the button at the top of the page that says Ask a Lawyer, and you can ask away right there. Brian, it's good to see you as always. Thank you for making some time to answer our questions.
Glad to be here, Rob. Thank you.
So you live in a beautiful part of the country. I'm guessing, especially this time of year, a lot of people are starting to get back out on their bikes and take some rides.
It is time to knock the dust off. Yes, sir.
Do you see more riders and therefore more wrecks during certain times of the year, or does it stay pretty consistent?
Yes, it does increase dramatically with warm weather. So we are just now getting into the heart of motorcycle season here in North Carolina.
And let's just talk the basics. What are some of the main differences between, say, a motorcycle crash and a passenger vehicle?
Well, the main difference is the insurance company always blames the motorcyclist.
Really?
In car wreck cases, you can get rear-ended. You get rear-ended on a motorcycle, somehow the insurance company is going to blame you and say you were contributory negligent, you stopped too short, you weren't paying attention. It's really sort of insane. So yeah, you almost always get blamed as the motorcyclist.
So there's like a built-in bias against motorcycle riders, you think?
Insurance companies believe that and act that way, yes. There is a bias against cyclists.
I would assume, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but are injuries greater, I would assume, on a motorcycle than if you're encaged in a cage in an automobile?
Yes, obviously so. That's the other huge difference between car wrecks and motorcycle crashes. Folks on the bikes usually get the worst end of the deal.
You mentioned contributory negligence. Let's talk about that. Tell us what that is and how that affects us. There's not a lot of states that have that, so tell us more about it.
Well, most states are what's called comparative negligence. In other words, they compare the negligence of the injured person to the at-fault driver, the person who caused the crash. And as long as the person who's injured and who's making the claim is not more than 50% responsible for causing the crash, you can still make a recovery. That's called comparative negligence. With pure contributory negligence, which is what North Carolina and I believe 4 other states still in the United States follow, if you are even 0.1% at fault, you recover nothing if the jury finds you contributory negligent. So it's a very harsh, archaic rule. It really should be replaced. In fact, there's a bill before the legislature right now in North Carolina to change that law to comparative negligence. But as of yet, it's still the law.
It sounds like that really puts the insurance companies in a position of power, because they don't have to they just have to prove 1%.
Actually less than 1%. But yeah, virtually nothing. If they can find anything that the motorcyclist did wrong, then they feel they're justified in denying responsibility.
So that would seem to me that's more important than ever to have an attorney like yourself who has experience and really knows what they're doing for these motorcycle crash cases. Brian, tell us what unique circumstances, what unique challenges that you face, or the things you may do differently for the motorcycle cases than, say, an automobile case.
Well, documentation is everything in a motorcycle case. Speed of the bike. Motorcyclists often ride with GPS. So we always try to find the GPS data to help us prove that the motorcyclist wasn't exceeding a safe speed. Documentation at the scene, skid marks, gouge marks, all that stuff is incredibly important, because you have to almost always have an accident reconstruction engineer in a motorcycle case, because the insurance company is going to point the finger at the motorcyclist. So you have to be able to prove scientifically with an expert that the motorcyclist was doing everything correct.
Do you feel like it gives you an advantage in the fact that you're also a rider yourself?
Oh yeah, that's a huge advantage because when I go to a crash scene, I can understand exactly what the motorcycle was doing. For example, I've got a case right now over in the far western part of the state near the Tail of the Dragon on Highway North Carolina 28, which is also a great road for motorcyclists. And my client was just driving along on this rural road, and someone pulled right out in front of him, and he had to take evasive action, and ended up the car pulled. Anyway, long story short, they collided, and my client lost his leg.
Oh, wow.
So in that situation, being able to go out to the scene, whether it's on my bike or in a car, as a motorcyclist, I understand exactly what the motorcycle rider is facing, why he reacted the way he did. And so that gives me a real advantage when I'm dealing with the insurance company. I can really talk to them from the perspective of a rider, and also when I'm talking to a jury.
Makes perfect sense. We always talk about how important it is, Brian, to get your attorney involved in the process as soon as possible. It sounds like that may be even more important with motorcycle crashes.
It is. You need an attorney on your side as quickly as possible. The main thing that folks need to understand is if you're in a crash, first rule, do not give a statement to the insurance company. They are trained to ask questions in a way that puts you sort of under the microscope, and the questions actually sort of suggest that you're in some way at fault. So don't give a statement.
Right.
Find a good lawyer and let the lawyer handle the case.
Is there a helmet law in North Carolina, and how might that affect somebody's case either way?
Yes, unlike our sister state to the south, North Carolina is a motorcycle helmet law state. You have to have a helmet if you're riding. In South Carolina, you do not. So, we get a lot of people who come into North Carolina from South Carolina. They're not aware of the law. They come over here without a helmet, and sometimes they get in trouble, either with the law because they don't have a helmet on. You can get a ticket. But if they get in a crash, then that is almost contributory negligence as a matter of law because there is a helmet law here. So, it's an important thing to understand. And, if you're riding a bike, I think it's common sense to wear a helmet, but it is the law in North Carolina.
If someone's in a crash and then the police come, I don't know if in your experience they also have that bias, but if the police officer says, oh, well, you're at fault, that doesn't necessarily mean they don't have a case and shouldn't contact you. Is that correct?
Sure. Police officers are human. They do the best they can with what they've got. They don't always have the scientific equipment to do the sort of detailed analysis that our experts do when we take them to the scene. So, yeah, sometimes police officers get it wrong. So if you're found at fault by the police officer, that's not fatal to your case.
Brian, lots of great information as always, and I do appreciate you making a little bit of time to answer our questions today.
Glad to be here. Stay safe out there.
That's going to do it for this episode of Ask the Lawyer. My guest has been North Carolina attorney Brian Davis. Remember, if you'd like to ask questions about your specific situation, just go to askthelawyer.com. Click the button at the top of the page that says Ask a Lawyer, and it'll walk you right through the process right there. Thanks for watching. I'm Rob Rosenthal with Ask the Lawyers.